Hello, welcome back to the Kay Stein Severe podcast. Check me out if you can see me on YouTube. I've got headphones and a mic. I'm getting more, kind of professional here than I was. Hopefully, the sound quality is better. You'll have to let me know if those of you who are listening, if you can tell a difference. I was on a podcast for um, some neighbors of mine who created this podcast called Three Homeless Guys After the Fires to kind of share information about the LA fires and rebuilding and all the stuff that we need to know. And through being on their podcast, I learned a little bit about the equipment that they used, and I invested in a few pieces. So you'll have to let me know. I still don't have an editor, so prepared for unfiltered, unscripted, raw truth telling, like you always get from me. So I have a few things to talk about today. I'm thinking this is called the good, the bad, and the ugly for today's episode. So I will start with the good. The good news is for our family that we are finally kind of moving into a bit more stable situation after the fires. We are moving to a new house that is actually closer to the Palisades, closer to the kids' schools. We have loved being in Venice, but it's pretty far out of the way from where we need to go, and it in LA traffic, leads to a lot of hours spent in frustration for me, and time that I'd rather be spending doing other things. So we're excited to be moving. And, I keep focused on the fact that um, we're still so fortunate, despite it all, despite the fact that we've faced and we still face really enormous challenges. I really try to stay focused on the fact that we're very blessed. We're still very blessed. And there are a lot of people who are suffering worse tragedies or suffering loss. There's somebody today who's finding out they have um, a serious disease, or somebody who's finding out they just lost a loved one, and I'm just always mindful of that. Yesterday, Nate came into my room, and teenagers, it's like they don't want to talk, and then all of a sudden they do want to talk. And in this case, it was like probably 11:30. I'm in bed. I'm halfway asleep, trying to fall asleep, and now here he comes and he wants to talk to me and have a heart to heart. So of course, I'm never going to say no to that. So I did talk with him, and he was really feeling so down about just everything, and saying like he has the worst life and the worst luck, and so much is and he I was trying to validate, obviously, that his whole life, his whole childhood has been kind of one big struggle after another. He was in kindergarten when I was diagnosed with cancer. Um, and I went through years of very aggressive treatment in order to have a chance to survive that. Um, that was right after his younger brother was born, right when I was diagnosed. Um, he went through, obviously, the pandemic. 2 years of his education was impacted by that, and during the pandemic he lost his sister, and it's I read somewhere recently, like, losing a sibling is akin to an amputation. And that seems right to me. um, it's like Nate and Molly were so close. They were 20 months apart, and they just did everything together, and they were so competitive with each other, and everything was you know in relation to the other. And he just lost her one day. He was at his grandmother's for a sleepover, and she went on a bike ride with her friend, and he never got to see her again. He never got to see her at all. He didn't get to see her in the hospital. um, she just left his life, and that is just really, really hard. And he was saying, I know this is supposed to be the good part. Sorry, I guess I'm getting into the bad part. Um, but that's life, right? It's always a combination of beautiful and very difficult things. So he was saying that, how can he go through his whole life without his sister? He's only 12, and how is he supposed to go the rest of his life without his sister? And I don't have a good answer for that, because I asked myself the same question: how am I supposed to go through the rest of my life without Molly? Um, and he's so young, and they were supposed to have so much more time together. So I said to him, though, Nate, you know, yes, it's so difficult, and I don't have an answer for how we're going to do it, except that we have to. We have no other choice, and I try to stay focused on the present moment as much as possible, because if I start looking ahead too far down the road, it's too much for me. I can't live with the fact, like, kind of, if I go down the road he's going down, which is like thinking about years ahead of time, without her here, I can't either. So this Molly's death has forced me to become someone who practices, and who tries to practice the art of staying present. Eckhart Tolle is an amazing teacher in that regard. Highly recommend his books, The Power of Now. He's got several. And I just think he is an incredible spiritual teacher. And his words really stayed with me after I read his books. I also listened to them. I told you I listened to a lot of audiobooks. Um, he has a very soothing kind of voice. So I recommend Eckhart Tolle. And I try to stay in the present as much as possible. But I reminded Nate too about, like, how many people in the world don't have access to clean water? These very basic and most fundamental things that we have and we just don't even think about and we take for granted. Um, so there are so many things like that, right? So there's a lot of good. We're together, we're healthy. I have to be appreciative of every day that I get, because I faced a very difficult illness, and you know, there's no guarantee of whether the treatments would work because I had so much disease. I had three tumors in my left breast, and I had a lot of node involvement under my arm. So, you know, I'm grateful for every day, and I think about my friends who don't get to be here. I lost several good friends to breast cancer, and another one to glioblastoma last year. So I think of them and really try to appreciate all the blessings that I do have in my life. And another good thing, and it's a huge good thing, is I just feel Molly with us so much. The foundation, Molly Stein Spear Foundation, is um, growing and uh, you know being more impactful and helping more people than I could have ever imagined. In the wake of the LA fires, we were very well positioned to start helping immediately because we were already a nonprofit that was focused on community service throughout Los Angeles and in Palisades in particular, since that's where we live. So we've been able to just kind of hit the ground running, and it's pretty incredible. It's really incredible, and the fact that, like, so many people come into my orbit, that I just have to think she kind of brings the right people at the right time. There's really no other explanation in my mind for kind of all of the ways that things line up, and the right people I need to meet for the thing that I need to do next. They just appear. It's just, I have to laugh sometimes. I was walking the dog, and I was getting a little bit down because I hadn't really seen any signs from Molly for a while, and I was asking for a sign, and I looked down, and there was this. I posted it on my social media. There was a sidewalk chalk, like, message written on the sidewalk right in front of me, and it said, "I see you, Mom. You're doing great." And I thought, okay, I know that's you, Molly. I got the message. And the funny thing is, um, I don't know if you guys have read the book Signs by Laura Lynn Jackson, but if you haven't, another book I highly recommend. I love Laura Lynn Jackson. I've been to several of her events, I've met her. I love her books. And one of the things she suggests is to pick a particular sign and ask for that sign from your loved one who's passed. And my sign, I was like thinking, what, this was right after Molly died, in the months after. And I was thinking, what sign can I ask her for? And I thought, well, she loved cats. She loved our cat Leroy so much. She loved animals in general. She loved all animals, but she had a special connection to our cat Leroy. So I thought, okay, I'll ask for cats. Then I thought, well, cats are too general. There's cats everywhere. So I'm going to ask for green cats, because it's weird. And if I see green cats, then I'll definitely know it's her. Um, and so time passed, and I was like, I think that was a dumb sign to ask for because I'm really not seeing a lot of green cats. Um, but eventually I did. And I saw one the day after I saw the sign, the sidewalk chalk that said, I see you, Mom, you're doing great. The very next day, I was taking Eli to school. I got out of the car, I walked around to go and open the door and take him out, walk him in. And behind my car on the street, not even on the sidewalk, just on the street, in sidewalk chalk, um, is a green cat that somebody drew on the road, like right behind my car. I mean, I don't know. I think there's something to all these things. I really do. And I notice when I see signs from Molly that I will see them in succession. Like it's happened in the past as well. Like when I see signs from her, I see a couple of them. And then time goes by and I feel like I don't see them again. And I start getting depressed about it and all of that. So I do believe in signs. I think it's really interesting. Being in the grieving world, around a lot of people who have lost a loved one, I hear a lot of stories that are really powerful. You probably heard my friend Stephanie Renner on the podcast talking about her son and some of the amazing signs that she has received from her son Jordan since he passed. So if you haven't heard that episode, I highly recommend checking it out. So I guess I kind of blended the good and the bad together, which is good because that's proper since that's how life is, right? I mean, we're just kind of constantly riding the waves, the ebbs and flow of life, like you know. And I try to just keep that in mind that like okay, when I'm experiencing like a wave of grief, like a really big wave of just like I can't fucking handle this. I want to curl up in a ball and not get up. Like when I experience a big wave like that, I can remind myself, somewhere in my head, I can tell myself like, this is just a big wave, like, and the big wave will pass, and then it will be easier. You just have to kind of ride this wave and go with it instead of resist it. Like if you're trying to resist it, if you're trying to swim like into it and you know be opposed to the force of it, you just exhaust yourself and it's harder. So I've kind of learned to try and move with these waves so that when I'm experiencing a huge, like overwhelming wave of grief, I'm kind of riding that and knowing like, all right, I'm at the, top of this wave and I know it's going to even out. I know these are rocky waters and it's difficult, but I know I'm going to get back to like a smoother shore, and it's never going to be, it's never going to be easy. Like it's never going to be like it was, and that's what we all want, right? We just want to go back to what we had, and we can't, and that's what's really hard to accept and to live with. But um, you know, I would say in our everyday lives, we're experiencing more good than bad, but definitely still the challenges associated with being displaced by the fires, having to deal with all the difficulties associated with having to like inventory the contents of our entire house and trying to deal with insurance and trying to move multiple times and the kids being in different schools. At least Eli's in a different school. Nate has stayed at his school, but we had a lot of turmoil surrounding his school as well and whether he would stay there or not. So I feel like we're just kind of like limping to the end of the school year. Like we're just like we're crawling to get to the end. But we're almost there. Summer's almost upon us, and I'm excited. I feel optimistic about things. I feel optimistic overall about the recovery of the Palisades, even though it's so awful and depressing and overwhelming to see it all. When you go there, I see progress being made. I see lots being cleared. I see some momentum. They're already starting to prepare to have school at Marquez Elementary School, which is where Eli was in school, this coming fall, which is incredible. I don't think we will be going back since it will be very hard to get in and out of the Palisades. It's more for people. I think the people who will go back earlier are the ones who are living in the parts of the Palisades that are livable, which ours isn't. Um, but I'm happy to see that. I love the school. I'm really happy to see that there's positive progress and really, really both tired because there's so much good stuff happening with the foundation, so much activity, but also like so like I don't know. I feel so energized by it, and I feel so reassured of Molly's presence by all the good things that are happening with her foundation, and that more and more people are learning her story and they're being inspired by her, and that she's really having a really meaningful impact on people's lives in a way that I never could have imagined. So, super grateful for that. And now, on to the ugly. The ugly that I want to talk about today has to do with the fact that two young people were murdered at an event in New York. And the Jewish community is all uh, feeling the heavy, heavy weight of the loss of Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky. These are two young diplomats who were at an event, a pro peace event, because that's who these young people, Yaron and Sarah, were. They were people who were dedicated to promoting peace and aspiring to build bridges, religious, cultural bridges. They were at an event to discuss humanitarian aid to various places in the world, including to Gaza. And a 31-year-old man named Elias Rodriguez traveled from Chicago to New York and murdered Yaron and Sarah. Yaron was about to propose to Sarah. He had an engagement ring. Um, these were young, bright, brilliant, beautiful people who were doing good things in the world. And Elias Rodriguez was so radicalized um, against Israel that he decided to go to New York to this event, which was not publicized because, like most Jewish events, we have to be very kind of careful about sharing where things are, giving the address. You have to RSVP. They have to kind of vet you, figure out who you are. Then they give you the address. I mean, everything that we do is under heavy security presence, which is very, very unfortunate. But even with that, even with those precautions and things that we do, there are still a very large number of anti-Semitic acts of hate and domestic terrorism, and it's very, very ugly. And I wish that more people listened to us when we said, hey, when you use language like globalize the intifada, what that means is um, it means mass killings. It means, in Israel, the second intifada included blowing up cafes, buses, the random murder of random people, um, where it wasn't safe to just kind of be out in public because somebody might activate a suicide vest and blow everybody up. And that's sort of what the Intifada means. And when you say to globalize that, you're saying to globalize these acts of terror and murder. And those words have meaning. They have meaning and they radicalize people. And we're seeing just an alarming number, especially of young people, who have nothing to do with Israel or the Middle East or Gaza personally. It does not affect them personally. And I'm not saying people shouldn't care about what's happening there. Yes, of course, we should care about what's happening in the world. And of course, there are peaceful protests, but many of them are not peaceful. We know that. We see that. They become violent. The the messages that are being shared, that are being screamed at many of these events, are violent. They're calls for violence against America, against Israel, against Western civilization itself. And I wish people took seriously the real risk of something like what happened to Yaron and Sarah, because it could, and this is what my Jewish family and friends have been saying, in the wake of this, it could be any of us. And it could be me very easily. I'm very active in my community, including in the Jewish community. Um, and it could very easily be me. And none of us should be living in fear like this. We shouldn't have to have our preschools and our synagogues and our events under heavy security presence. I don't know how Elias Rodriguez was able to travel from Chicago to New York with a firearm in his checked bag, go into this event, and lurk around outside, shoot these innocent people, these beautiful young people who were trying to promote peace, just like the people who lived on the border of Gaza in the kibbutzim. They were peaceniks. They were people who were trying to um, build bridges and trying to overcome divides and promote peaceful coexistence. Gadi Moses is one of the older people who was taken hostage, and Gadi Moses is an absolute inspiring hero. If you haven't seen him or his story, Google it. What a beautiful, powerful, inspiring man Gadi Moses is. When he was in Hamas captivity, he would walk a certain number of steps around his very small place that he was kept. And he did all kinds of things to keep himself like mentally sharp and physically as strong as possible. And you see this amazing image of Gadi Moses when he was being taken out. He's surrounded by all of these Hamas terrorists, and yeah, they're terrorists. Like, I'm going to say that clearly, that these are terrorists who are all in black and with their green headbands. And you see him looking out, and there's a sea of all these people around him, and he's just looking out, and he looks so calm and steady and secure in himself and his goodness. And he told his captors he would come back and teach them agriculture and farming um, when the war ended, because that's who he is and what he's about. So this is a person who survived torture and captivity, and didn't lose himself and his soul, and um, still, despite it all, extended a hand of peace and coexistence. And Yaron and Sarah were like that too, and they should still be with us, and they're not. So we're all shaken by this, and we're wondering, is this the beginning of a globalized intifada? Does that mean we're really going to see mass violence on an even greater scale, targeted at Jews. It's scary. But my family, we were talking about it last night, and we were remarking on how it could be any of us at an event, and um, we all said, and we all believe this. Well, we're still going to keep going. Like, we will still go. We're not afraid. Like, even if we are afraid, even if we sometimes feel afraid, um, our fear will not stop us from showing up for our community, for continuing to do the amazing work that we do to serve others, to help those who are most in need of help, um, and to advance the causes Molly cared about, which very much includes her Judaism and her connection to Israel. So that is part of what we do, and proudly, and we will keep doing. Um, and I of course don't expect to receive positive feedback from everybody about what I do. Obviously not. And people are free to not like me. They are free to not follow me. They're free to say whatever they want to say. And I don't care about a negative review focused on politics, but I care about a review that contains information about me that is so false and contrary to who I am as a person. And so if someone says that I don't care about innocent life being lost, that I don't care about babies and children who are, you know, uh, in the path of war and whose lives have been cut short, that I don't have any empathy for that. Um, that's something that I have to correct. And part of the reason I started writing in longer form and doing a podcast is because I wanted to be able, I hoped that in this longer format that I would be able to express myself better, and more clearly, and to articulate nuance, which I know nuance is hard for people right now. It's like people think oftentimes very black and white. You're either on one team or the other, and there's no room for any sort of gray area or nuance, or grappling with difficult problems that don't have easy answers. So in that environment, social media posts I felt could be sometimes misunderstood, and I wanted an outlet to express myself more fully and more clearly. Um, and I'm doing that here, right? And this is my podcast because I want people to be able to look at me after having gone through all of the challenges I have faced. And yes, they have been enormous. I lived a childhood of abuse and neglect and poverty. I somehow overcame those very big obstacles through education, through mentorship of an educator, um, managed to claw my way through college and law school, create a very successful career I was very proud of and worked very hard for, uh, build a beautiful family, and then kind of have it all come crashing down with a cancer diagnosis, with the death of my 12-year-old child during a global pandemic, with family members, including my mother and my sister, who are lost in the throes of addiction. I have a mother who has been unhoused for most of the last decade. Um, and my entire town burnt down. So yeah, I think that I have some things to say that are of value to other people. And I think that people, when they look at someone who has gone through something very, very painful and very difficult that seemed insurmountable, and they see people on the other side of that. So, for example, when I was first diagnosed with cancer, um, it gave me strength to see other young women who were ahead of me in the process, who completed chemo or who were done with their treatment, whose hair had started growing back already. All of those things, like that gave me the greatest amount of strength. And so I put myself out there in the world, no filters, no editing, no nothing. I try to just be as transparent and open and honest and vulnerable as I can possibly be. I put myself out there in this way because I know, because so many people tell me, it helps me by seeing you. I just lost a child and I see you 4 years later doing what you're doing. And it doesn't mean I'm not hurting because I fucking hurt every day. And it doesn't mean that I don't feel like I can't go on. I have these feelings. I will always have these feelings. I will still have these enormous waves of grief, and they come out of nowhere. So it makes it pretty hard to just lead a normal life because you never know when one of these enormous things that knocks you off your ass is going to come and knock you off your ass. But people tell me this, and people in the cancer world tell me this, that it helps them to see me 9 years out, looking well and doing things in the world. And I got cancer in the rearview mirror. It doesn't mean I don't worry about it or I'm not scared. I'm scared sometimes because I have a pretty high chance of recurrence. I have about a 30% chance of recurrence that could happen anytime. I just have to live with that. And it's not easy. But there are days now, a lot of days, that I don't think about cancer anymore. And that wasn't always the case. I never even thought that would be the case. I thought I would always think about cancer every single day for the rest of my life. And I don't now. So I know that helps people to put myself out so that you can see me. And if you see yourself in any part of my story, um, and see me still getting up and still living a life of meaning and beauty and engagement, I hope it inspires you and gives you strength. That's why I do this. And so, yeah, when people say things that aren't about a political difference, it's not about a political difference when it comes to attacks on who we are as people. When you attack the Jewish people, when you say that Israel shouldn't exist and should be destroyed, you are attacking me and my family, at our core. So it's not political at all. It's not a political difference. It is a difference of fundamental values. It is you attacking me and spreading the worst falsehood you could possibly spread about me, um, on my podcast that I'm creating to put good into the world and to share my truth and to have on my guests that I think my friends and followers will benefit from hearing from and will enjoy hearing from. So when you come to my space and you say things about me that are defamatory, that aren't true, that have no basis in reality, and go to the core of who I am as a person, as a mother, as a grieving mother, that's something I have to say something about. And your behavior is as ugly as these other folks who have become so radicalized that they have lost sight of what they're even doing. Like, what does this guy Elias Rodriguez have to do with Gaza or Israel? Like, why would he throw his life away at 31? He said, I did it for Palestine, I did it for Gaza. And he actually went into the event after he murdered Yaron and Sarah. He went into the event and sat down and started talking to people. Um, and then said that he did it eventually. I mean, it's just so incredibly bizarre. And Sarah, this beautiful young woman from Kansas City, uh, was sitting up after she had been shot. She kept trying to get up after he shot her, and she tried to crawl away, and he shot her dead. So yeah, this is something that affects me deeply. It affects every member of the Jewish community very deeply. And I'm going to read this to you. A friend of mine wrote this, and this, I think she expresses how many of us are feeling very well. So I'm going to close my podcast with this. I was explaining to my kids the other day that because there are so few Jewish people around the world, and I'll pause there and remind you, Jews are 0.2% of the world's population. 0.2%. 2% in America. That's how small the Jewish people are. Israel is smaller than the state of New Jersey. My friend went on, because there are so few Jewish people around the world, when something like this terrible act of violence happens or a hostage is killed, the other Jews around the world often feel the pain personally, as if it was their own family. Mishpasha. That's kind of the word for an extended family that we use. On October 7th, 2023, it was like an electric current going through me as I learned the news of what had happened in Israel. The trauma was very real and personal. Since then, each time a hostage is pronounced dead or a young IDF soldier is killed in the line of duty, the majority of Jews around the world grieving the majority of Jews around the world grieve or say a prayer or hug their own kids a little tighter. I know I do. It does not mean we do not feel sadness for the loss of life in other places, be it Sudan, India, Gaza, or here in America. Jews believe that one life is an entire world. I talked about that last time on my podcast. Today, I am feeling the interconnectedness most Jews feel to one another, even those we haven't met. My heart literally breaks with the news coming out of Washington, D.C. today. May the memories of these two young people be for a blessing. I could not have said it better than that. That's exactly how I feel. Um, and if people don't like that, I mean, I don't know what to tell you except you're going to have to move on. And it's not a political difference, it is a fundamental difference of value in respecting other people, and who they are, their peoplehood, their religion, all the things progressives say they care so much about, um, don't seem to apply when it comes to the Jews. So I'm going to close with that. My guest next week is named Mary Klagholz. I am excited to introduce Mary to you. She is one of our new board members of the Molly Stein Sapir Foundation. We have not met in person. We have not even spoken on the phone. So this will be our first conversation, and you will be able to sit in. Mary lives in New Jersey. She has been from the very beginning, since Molly was in the hospital, she was just kind of leading the Team Molly charge. She was the person I kind of saw online who was so caring and kind and generous and just stood out as like a bright light for me during that horrible time and since then. And she's become almost like a surrogate grandmother for the boys in a way, even though they haven't met. She is just an incredibly beautiful human being. I think our story together kind of represents the best of social media, being, that we had we'd never known each other. She just saw my story. She saw me in desperation, like asking people to pray for Molly, and she came to our sides and she hasn't left. She's organized beach cleanups in her own community on the East Coast as part of Team Molly. She is an incredibly interesting person who served in the United States military as a young woman, who's now dealing with um, the challenges of being a caregiver for an elderly sister, which I know so many people are facing, especially sort of the sandwich generation that I'm part of, with the younger kids and the elderly parents. Um, Caregiving is just such a huge responsibility so many of us face, and we have so many challenges surrounding that, and I think we don't talk about that enough. So we will be talking about that, and I think it'll be a really interesting and inspiring conversation. So have a wonderful holiday weekend, and I will be back with you next week. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave a review and please remember to follow and subscribe. Thank you.